I want to introduce Jacques Vigeant is known throughout the Oracle BI community as the guy that does the cool demos. So I have been looking forward to this. I remember, gosh, a decade ago or so, Jacques doing a live Oracle Open World presentation where he's talking into his phone and he says, show me sales by district via bar graph, and it just pops up. So this is the same type of thing that Jacques is great at. So we're really looking forward to this. As a matter of fact, it seemed to be a Sith Lord showing this type of stuff. So I'm going to let you go ahead and share your screen and take us through the new stuff coming out with mobile applications.
Great, thanks, Dan. Boy, if you thought that was cool, you should have seen what we were working on this morning. There's some really cool stuff around natural language coming, but I'll save that for another demo. And just quickly, because I saw that, or I was listening on the question regarding scorecard, just purely for those who are interested in that, I used to be the PM for the scorecard product that is defunct as part of OBIEE, but rest assured that I'm actually working on what I'll call sort of our next generation approach to conditional formatting rules and key performance indicators. So we are working on some really cool stuff that hopefully you'll see or start seeing later this year. So we haven't forgotten about scorecarding type capabilities and metric monitoring type of stuff, but we've updated it with a sort of a new approach to things. So that has nothing to do with why I'm here today, but I do that. And I'm going to hijack the screen here, Dan. Can you see my screen?
I can.
Okay, and just, sorry, my resolution is a little smaller, so my zoom window is in the way. Do you guys see a black square in the top right, or?
We do not.
Okay, perfect. So Zoom's not seeing that. So let's talk a little bit real quick. I won't do too many slides because I want to show you the goods, if you will. But today, if you've got OAC, you've really got two primary ways that are supported for you to access your OAC content, or your OAC data, I should say. The first one, which is simply typing in your mobile browser, the URL, and if it's what I call modern, or if it's DV class content, so projects, if you will, we will do an adaptive and responsive layout based on the form factor in question. If it's more classic content, answers, dashboards, BI publisher, and so forth, we would effectively render it in the browser window. You'd have to pinch and zoom around in order to get to your content, but functionally you should be able to pull the various prompts and change the values and at least get to your data. But admittedly, for the sort of older generation content, it's not as pleasing as the DV projects and canvases that you might look at. The other way is through Oracle Analytics day by day. And the approach for day by day, admittedly, is a little bit more sort of forward thinking, and we're trying to sort of apply social concepts to analytics, and we're trying to create sort of feed-like experiences that are not really curated per se. They're more organic and community driven. Now, admittedly, that's not for everyone, right? And so we find ourselves with a bit of a gap, right? We've got some customers are really into, let's let the community go and people will share, analyses and content between themselves, and that's how they'll get informed from day to day. But I've got an IT department. They spend all this time doing really sophisticated dashboards and so forth. I'd really like to give them access to some straightforward content. So given that, we're introducing, we're currently in sort of our second round of internal beta. So we're hoping in the next, with this quarter, at some point, calendar quarter, we hope to release a new mobile app for Android and iOS, a native app that we're simply calling Oracle Analytics. Not complicated. The intent of the app is for you to find, search for find, share your existing curated Oracle Analytic content. So we didn't want to come up with some fancy new name. It's your Oracle Analytic content on your mobile device. Now it's optimized for data visualization projects. All your DV projects, or most of your DV projects, barring any sort of custom shenanigans, will render natively, will be super fluid and interactive and hopefully fast and really cool. But you can also still open the classic content. You can search your reports, dashboards, and so forth, but we'll open them very much akin to what we do today, which is in a sort of in-app browser. The intent or the use cases for Oracle Analytics, the Oracle Analytics app, is really to take the best concepts of our Synopsys application, which is currently in the App Store, which was really for exploring data on a mobile device. Take the best concepts from Synopsys and the key use cases from our old mobile HD app, which was sunset early last year, which you should expect to see disappear from the App Store shortly in the next 6 months. I'll say, we don't have a formal date. But that app has been end of life since last January. We left it up there because we didn't, want to leave anybody hanging for now. So given that, let me just quickly switch over to my my desktop here, and we will try to show you live what this looks like. Let me go ahead and sort of minimize. Sorry. We have a tablet and we have a phone. Can you see? Just make sure everybody sees my phone.
Yep, looks good.
SMT 870.
Yeah, that's my Galaxy Tab. And all right, I wish I could minimize this Zoom window. It's quite large. All right, so the reason I wanted to show you this is side by side. It is effectively, we've got two major form factors, tablets and phones, obviously. So I wanted to show you at the same time how we adapt the content for one or the other. So I'm going to go ahead and fire it up here on my phone and on my tablet. And so the intent here is that even though it looks different than the home page, oops, that's not good news. Oh, sorry, I opened the wrong app. So first thing is I should open Oracle Analytics. So, so even though this looks different than the home page, users who are accustomed to using Oracle Analytics Cloud or server for that matter, will feel completely at home. There's a search bar up top, pretty straightforward. You've got different tabs. I've got my recents, my favorites here. I'm tapping on projects. I'm logged in as a sort of super user, so I've got elevated privileges. So I actually have access to data sets. But a consumer may not even see data sets because, your consumer might only be authorized to view and interact with content, not create new ones. But I'm allowed, so I see content here. And then finally, we've got our, reports, dashboards, and effectively classic content. We've got BI Publisher as well. So, so what does that look like? So I see that there are people using my server as I'm using this. So I'm going to open just a classic piece of content so you can actually see sort of what it looks like. So here on my tablet, it renders closer to what it does on the desktop simply because the aspect ratio works. I've got my, drop downs, works just fine on both. This is an answers report, but a dashboard would pretty much behave the exact same way. So, so we're cool in terms of letting you access your sort of classic existing content that you've had and that your users are accustomed to. Oops. Hang on a second.
Jacques,
hang on a second. My power. Can you hear me again? Sorry.
Yeah, hear you.
My PowerPoint had a video running in the background and there was audio in it, so I could hear noise coming. Sorry about that. Go ahead, Dan. What was your?
I've seen more and more, the canned demos. I'm glad to see somebody from Oracle giving the live demo, and I have not seen somebody demoing two devices at once as you switch back and forth between the tablet and the phone. So,
Oh, yes. It's a new trick I've learned with this new app that lets you do that. It's called Visor. Check it out. So now let's go ahead and open. I'm going to go to my favorites. A couple of things, of course, I can tap and hold any of these and then like add to favorites. I could open it in my browser, and I can even delete it if I'm allowed to. But for now, I'm going to go to my favorites, and I'm going to open what I call the All Charts demo, which sort of has a view of our, this is sort of our debugging view, but it shows the breadth and depth of our support for the various visualizations. My network bandwidth is a little tricky here, so hopefully it'll come back. So here on the left, because I'm on a tablet, the aspect ratio mimics a lot more a desktop. I've got sort of something that's akin to what I would see on my desktop. It's laid out, what we call the project layout. And then on the phone, I've got effectively equivalent content, but it's laid out sort of optimized for my phone so that I can actually sort of look at one viz at a time throughout my phone that way. So that's a different way that you sort of navigate and access your content. If I want to switch my canvases, I can tap on my phone on the top right, or on my tablet, I have this, we call these fabs, which I always forget what they're called, but these little buttons on the left, and it brings out the canvas selector. And here I can see I've got access to different canvases. I'm going to go ahead and select my different canvases here. And hopefully that will come back again. I wish my server was snappier, but between all the resolution and traffic on my network, this is the resolution I'm getting. So here we can see effectively that I'm looking at stacked bar charts. Again, we support a lot of different things. Let me go ahead and maximize this one. So if you're accustomed to the grammar in DV, you can sort of play with the colors, the width of the bars. We support multiple axes. We support tables, pivots, all that, again, on the phone as well. So we tried to get as much, I'll never say feature parity. DV's got a 6-year head start on the mobile client. The truth of the matter is we had to write from scratch in OpenGL a charting engine in order to do this. So what we've done is we've taken the 80, maybe 70% of the most popular chart types and the most popular sort of grammar interactions that our customers have done. Something that a lot of you maybe don't know is for the last probably 6 months, 8 months, we've actually instrumented the Oracle Analytic Cloud to give us really interesting anonymized statistics on what customers are doing, how they're using the software, what are they clicking on, what are the top 5 chart types, what are the sort of options that they use on different charts. It's really enlightening, frankly, to look at some of that data. So anyways, we're trying to use that instrumentation to infuse our decisions in terms of which chart types, which interactions do we want to prioritize for the mobile client. So again, I say this simply because, there's the Sankey diagram, the sunburst, some of these advanced networking diagrams. Those aren't supported out of the box, but the good news is if you have a report that has that content on it, we'll detect it when you go to open it, and we'll give you 2 options. We'll say, hey, this third-party plugin isn't supported natively in the mobile app. We can do 2 things. You can either open the mobile app, and for that one viz, instead of rendering it, we'll just give you a table, so at least you can see the data. It's better than nothing. Or you can straight up open it in mobile web, in which case you'll have support for that in sort of standard HTML. So you'll see the viz type, but it won't be super cool, interactive and fluid like the current app is. So that's something to remember. A couple of things that are notable here is that, I always get this wrong here, is that we're trying to promote a lot of sharing. So for example, here, I'm on this canvas, I can say, hey, I want to share this. And I could share it, to Slack, to all these different channels, but I could even here start on my tablet, hit share to my PC, and now it's going to log me in to that dashboard on that canvas in my PC. And so here we can see this content now, or this dashboard rendered on my desktop. Let me try to get this out of the way now. Boom. Other notable things that we support that I think are sort of meaningful for this audience, maps, geospatial. We never used to support that. That was always sort of a difficult thing to support. Tag clouds, area, obviously all the variations of radars and pies and so forth. Multi-axis visualizations. So here I'm going to show a couple of examples where we've got combo charts where things are on different axes. And then for any one of these charts, let me go, before I do that, let me also show you some of the effort that we've gone through on some of the more mundane to a developer, but not mundane to a lot of our customers, is something as mundane as a table. So we've gone through a ton of effort to do some really cool stuff with the pivot. So now you can do a lot of really sort of interesting things at the pivot level. Another interesting thing is that whatever viz you're on, and again, this works equally well on the phone, albeit in a sort of slightly altered way. For any one of these vizzes, you can hit, and let me show you on the bottom right here on the tablet, down near the bottom right here, there's a little info button. It appears on all the charts. I can press it here on my phone. And on the chart on my phone, I had two measures. I had units sold and sales price. And so it gives me a little bit of a sort of summary of the chart. It's giving me sort of the min, the max, the growth, if applicable, the highest values, the lowest values, so the top performers, the worst performers. Here on my tablet, I've got, again, the same thing. I've got my profit, my discount ratio. For each measure, I can scroll through and see, again, a summary of that information. Other sort of bits of information, let me see if I can find it on another chart, sorry. Let me go back, excuse me, there we go, bar. There we go. Sorry, let's see if I can find one that works here. Now, for any one of these, or for the ones that have the right data, we support what we call a narrative, on-the-fly narrative. And unfortunately, I can't seem to find one right now. They just pushed a new version to me. Let me see if I can go back to where I'm. There we go. They played a trick on me, but the intent here is that if we can, we'll produce an on-the-fly narrative. Here's one on my phone. So here you can see the little play button that shows up at the bottom of my chart. And so if I play that,
the data represents sales for the following discounts grouped S 3.6 M3.
So what it does is it actually goes through, leverages our natural language generation plugin or technology, and then produces a meaningful observation of the chart. We're not just reading the data here, which would be, incredibly easy to do. What we're actually doing is we're trying to find the meaningful observations on that chart. So for example, here on this chart,
the data represents the units sold for a total of 6 products. When taken together, the 6 products.
Oops. Sorry about that. As I was.
The data represents the units sold for a total of 6 products. When taken together, the 6 products reach a total value of 1,125,806, 187.
Anyways, it would highlight the products that stand out, the trend, if things are trending in a positive way, in a negative way, and so forth. So anyways, that's what we call the language narrative that's available on each one of these. And then one other thing I wanted to point out on the phone is, this, what we call the mobile layout is the default sort of rendering that happens on most of your projects, where in order to see the various views, you have to open this tray and then flip from view to view. Now, if you want to honor the original intent from the author, you can hit use the project layout, and then I'm going to flip my phone sideways here. And so it will actually attempt to render and squeeze the project and try to get as close to the original pixels as possible in order to reproduce sort of the content based on what the author wanted to. So here, for any one of these, again, I can double click. Again, I can look at the insight. I can hit hit the play button if that's what I'm into, and so forth. So let me go ahead and go back to my portrait mode. And then the last thing I wanted to show is if you tap and hold any one of these projects, we actually will take that language narrative here and generate a podcast for you. And so what the system will do is it'll iterate through all the visualizations that make sense, or that we can sort of derive a natural language summary from, and then collate that into a podcast. So here I have a Game of Thrones dashboard, which looks at, unfortunately, I need to come up with a better demo, but the all the various tribes within the Game of Thrones and the statistics around who kills who. The developers thought that'd be fun, but I'm going to go ahead and generate a new podcast here. And on the fly, it's generating a podcast, and hopefully I'll put this next to my microphone. Hopefully here in a second. Again, my network's a little glitchy today, it would seem.
Death count by killer. The data shows the death count for a total of 129 killers. What stands out in this situation is that a few killers account for more than 80% of the total. There is a dominant group of killers.
Anyways, so then it goes through the dominant groups, highlights who are the top performers in terms of savagery in Game of Thrones. But you can imagine if we applied that to your quarterly results, and then it's going through the meaningful vises for that. So that covers the highlights of what we plan to support at launch. And the reason I bring that at launch is we have some pretty cool plans for this app. Initially, we want to make sure we support the consumer use cases. So the ability to open and interact with all the DV content that people have created for you. In subsequent releases, we hope to, and we will, once we nail the consumption use cases, allow you to create projects from your tablet or phone directly. And whether you get an email with an Excel attached, or just want to open an existing data set and create some vises, you could just go ahead, you can hit a data set and then say, for example, well, this wasn't a terribly interesting data set, but maybe I'll open my financial samples. I want to look at my unit sold. Sorry. I want to show my gross sales by country and maybe by product, and then sort of generate some projects from that. So I'm going to add those to my canvases, and then that's going to generate, if you're more if you prefer, a more linear experience, will allow you to search through your RPD and then generate projects from that. And so it'll allow you to sort of create and explore content directly from your tablet. This UI here that I showed you is more transitional. We're still doing some explorations there, but the intent here is that we will allow you to create projects on the fly, either from content that arrives via email or Dropbox or other sort of mobile delivery platforms, and then upload that to OAC and then allow you to leverage all the sort of analysis capabilities that's part of OAC. So that covers the highlights of what I wanted to show. Any questions? Let me look at the Q&A real quick, or if Dan.
Yeah, there are some stuff, Jacques. I'll help you as you navigate to that. Some questions have come in. We really could do with live API integration examples like Tableau has. It would be greatly helpful in positioning internally. Any comments on what you might be able to do from that standpoint?
For mobile specifically, or this is an OAC in general
I think this
observation?
is geared especially towards mobile, but I don't know for sure.
Yeah, mobile's an interesting beast in that the mobile team has always been a little bit of an island, if you will, and we are bound by the rules of iOS and Android, and those rules dictate largely that in order to access OAC, we have to use proper REST calls and OAuth and all sorts of standard access mechanisms to get data in and out of OAC. What that has forced inadvertently is for us, OAC in general, to create a whole set of REST APIs, some what we call our data service API, and a whole set of APIs in order to support the mobile use cases. Those are partially private right now, but we are releasing them from release to release. We are documenting them and making them public. In fact, one of the PMs regularly releases blogs, Mike Duran in question. If you search for, we call them the embedding use cases, there's a whole project dedicated to exposing OAC APIs and allowing you to build your own websites that sort of embed OAC inside of it and is fully interactive. And so definitely I'll send Dan an example of some of those blogs that are out there. But definitely there's a lot of work going on there.
Yeah, if you send them to me, Jacques, I'll put them on the Slack workspace for the OUC in the analytic channel on that, so that we can share with the rest of the community.
Sure. Okay? Yeah. I see the natural language generate, or the NLG, is not available on OAS. This is true. It's one of the few subtle differences between OAC and OAS. As it stands right now, and the reason we use a third-party OEM as part of generating that natural language summary, and for that reason, it introduces a complexity or a constraint, I should say, that is not available on-prem. We've looked at it, but for now, it's not on the immediate roadmap, but we reassess all the time. Note about OAS, I should probably throw out there that at launch, the mobile apps that I showed are for Oracle Analytic Cloud only due to infrastructure reasons around security. We do have a project to make all our mobile apps work against OAS, but it will likely be the next version of OAS, not the one that's immediately about to release. It'll likely be the next major release if we require some major server improvements. So we have heard our customers ask for that, and we are working on making our mobile apps accessible through OAS. Any other?
You want me to read these? Or
Sure.
All right. Can you also talk about how scalable the data processing engine is for OAS with respect to workflow and analytical functions?
No, I can't.
No, I think that's your area.
No, I'm just kidding. Well, no, I'm not kidding, but that's just not an area I focus on.
Okay.
I do know that we're working on some, I believe it comes out in 6.1 and it's possibly behind the scenes in 6.0. We are working on sort of embedding an embedded version of the Oracle database that instead of our Xsa caching, we would actually cache to a sort of hidden Oracle database behind the scenes, a hidden ADW, if you will, behind the scenes, which is going to dramatically improve the size of your DV projects, as well as a lot of the scalability around data flows, because I know right now they're limited to, I think, 1 million rows. So we're going to more than double that. I do know also it depends on how many OCPUs your server has. I think 8, there's a limit of 1 million. I think 16, there's 2.5. I'm not sure those numbers. It's just not my area. But yeah, there are a lot of projects around scalability and performance that should start seeing the light of day in 6.0 and 6.1. And some of the numbers are pretty astonishing. And I'm they're like 10 to 50 times, like depending on the type of data. And so I'm going to leave it at that.
Doc, with that, can we think of that as basically when you put stuff in data sets, that would basically be like running out of the database instead of the data set capability now? Is that what you're kind of talking about?
Yeah. So when we internally, you might hear us throw around something called an XSA, and the Xsa cache. That's like a binary file format that houses your data set's data, right? And we sort of manage that in OAC ourselves, and it's the data access layer. We are moving towards an option, and this is optional. You don't have to turn this on if you don't want to have an embedded ADW cache where your data sets would effectively be stored in a sort of hidden ADW cache behind the scenes. So that gives you even in-memory capabilities and much more scalability and all the goodness that comes with ADW and a team that develops that super high performance engine. So yeah.
I'm going to sneak in another question. We have a little bit, we fortunately have some extra time here at the end. For those of us that are designing, we have at least one client that's very interested in mobile. And we're trying to design our projects. It's helpful knowing that you're designing this, especially for the DV experience. We kind of anticipated that, given that's where Oracle's focus is on, not the classic interface. But what do we do to make sure that our projects we're creating now will work with the mobile experience? And some companies are going towards this mobile first deployment. So for instance, should we avoid using a Freeform Canvas? Because the Freeform Canvas is not going to, background colors, you know how popular the black background is.
Yep.
Color rendering, all that. How do we design our projects in such a way that they are ready to be taken up by the new mobile app when it's available?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things you've touched on. One right now, right off the bat, I guess you've been burned by it a few times, which is the Freeform Canvas, right? It's a capability that is kind of popular because it lets you, line up the pixels, but then you share your project with somebody on a different screen. Forget about a phone, but on a different screen, and then the aspect ratio doesn't work, and so you sort of betray yourself. The funny thing is, the mobile app actually will allow you to do render freeform canvases, but again, it'll sort of look like it actually will look exactly like you intended. But if you're looking at your phone vertically, you're going to have to zoom in and zoom out. So it's not ideal. So the intent of, there's a couple of ways you could handle it. First off, we're not going to support plugins, right? You can imagine we can't support plugins because we don't even know what they are. And then if you use the primary chart types, bar, line, pie, stacked, vertical, horizontal maps. I mean, you saw all of the ones that we support, and there will be a list. They should render. The intent was that we would honor the author's intent. So if you lined them up a certain way and you're looking at them, of course, in a tablet, it should render them almost exactly the same. Things like background colors, we're limited the same way you're limited on the desktop. Like, for example, people don't realize that, and that, you know, the dark mode of DV or of content doesn't necessarily change the default line colors. And so all of a sudden your phone will switch to black, but the line color is a gray. Well, those don't contrast very well, right? So there are some just practical things that can occur that you have to sort of consider when you're designing if you're putting a black background. But there will be a list of formally supported things that you should follow. The other way that you can do it is you can actually create your project in version 1+1, let's say, from the phone or the tablet itself. So if you want to know what it's going to look like, you could start on the tablet, build it on the tablet. You will know exactly how it renders on the tablet, right? So that's, you know, one of the reasons we're actually exploring ways to create content directly from the device. I would say, hopefully, if we do a good job, the stuff that might not come through, or some fonts might be a little different. All the major grammar gestures should be supported. Our goal is to make it work. So if you don't go off-roading too much in your canvas, then it should work out of the box.
All right, so that sounds like some of the tricks that we might need to play to do stuff might have to be revisited if we're covering up something that we don't want to show. Those types of tricks. Don't do tricks as much.
Like you're thinking doing like having two vises overlap each other with a white background. And I mean, technically we're going to do that on the tablet itself, but you know, results may vary depending on the trick. Right. Okay.
Makes sense. All right. That's helpful. Another question came in. What about custom data sources and custom data source specific parameters being managed? Thinking of more of a technical / data science persona on that experience.
In mobile specifically, or in OAC in general?
It was OAC and OAS specifically.
Okay.
Yeah, so I know there's some work being done right now to allow custom connectors for customers to create, including also a JDBC connector. I think that's in beta now. Some people might already have it. So certainly we will allow customers and vendors and providers to create sort of custom connections to OAC, so that if your data is from some homegrown system, you could potentially create your own connector. That's coming. I don't know exactly the timelines. That's just not an area of the product I specifically focus on, but we can ask Alan Lee that question for more details.
And here's another from a different person. Any thoughts on decreasing or streamlining project file size that's required to be downloaded to the user? We've noticed that when you have many canvases within a project, it can cause really significant delays in the launching and rendering times of the project in both PC and mobile browsers prior to DB query runtime. We'd rather not limit the number of canvases within a project, as they're basically like having many dashboard pages within traditional answers.
I'll tell you what, for mobile, it's a serious issue, the size of the initial JavaScript download. And so we have been working on, and I'm sure you, hopefully, if you used to use the mobile web access to projects, and you know in the past and use it now, it's more than twice as fast. I'd even say maybe 3 or 4 times as fast, depending on the content. And the way we've done that is by sort of breaking up the JavaScript download that happens when you connect, so that we don't just download everything as part of one big sort of monolithic DV JavaScript file. We sort of break up the parts that we need when we need them. That's a sort of iterative thing that occurs over time. I don't know specifically if I'm sure the desktop will benefit from that work, because it's frankly it's the same. But I can ask and get back to you on specific projects. I've personally not heard that many times that request. So you must have some
share
big ones.
As we have developed more and more of these projects, the capabilities of the platform are changing in such a way that it changes the way we organize our projects. So for instance, I'll give you an example. We got used to creating lots and lots of canvases because you have a development instance of this canvas you want to show it, then you have the production, let's say. Then you go and make a son of. The ability to right click a canvas and say duplicate this canvas, make the change, and then save or not save was a game changer to us. The other was, and if you don't keep up on these little changes, you don't know that the platform is increasing. So we also now have the ability to copy a canvas between projects.
Yep.
It's a little bit of, do I trust it? Because you got your project, you got it all just right. So, do I dare do that? But the ability to copy vises and canvases between projects means for this person, you could have your production project and then all that extra stuff that you don't want to let go of, keep it in a separate project and then it doesn't pollute it. Any concerns with that, Jacques?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of, no, I think that, doing what you're doing makes sense. One of the things that we're introducing in 6.0 is multi-table data sets, which is the ability to create a data set of data sets, right? That joins, think of it as like a mini RPD, right? Like where you can bake in some join logic, you can do inner outer, all the complicated stuff that you would do in a RPD, but in a sort of, think of it as a lightweight data model. The reason I bring that up is a lot of people create, one project that is the Uber project with all the logic in it, all the mashup files. They've got 3 or 4 files in there. They join them together in the project. And then you end up with one monolithic project just because you didn't want to have to redo those joins in the mashup and all the calculations from project to project. Well, this multi-table data set project lets you create multiple projects on one Uber sort of or more sophisticated data set that has these joins and calculations. So hopefully you could create smaller projects than you normally would have. In addition, something that might help you, I don't know this offhand, but there's a ton of work going on around the consumer experience and the ability for users who are users who are consumption only and not authors would have a much restricted experience, right? Where they can only look at certain canvases. They won't have any of that noise of those panels, right? So they won't have the prepare tab. They won't have a whole bunch of noise. And so I would hope that part of that effort would allow us to sort of not load half the stuff that we normally would for an author, right? So,
well, that'll be welcome when that comes out. All right. Well, this has been super. Really appreciate you going through stuff. Any other final thoughts before we start to close this out?
No, I'm looking forward to, I'd love to do another one of these at the right time, Dan, to show off some of the new sort of natural language and next generation day-by-day stuff coming out, hopefully this summer. So,
okay.
Let me know.
Well, super. Let me go ahead and share my screen. This time I'll try and remember actually click the final button to do that. But thank you, Jacques, for going through all the stuff in mobile. We're excited to see this coming out. You want to, one last question. You want to give any hint on when it's coming out?
Every time I say it, I'm wrong. So I can tell you today's truth, and today's truth is a lie. Look, we're shooting for, our goal was to get it out on 5.9, right? And the mobile client does requires 5.9 or above. The mobile client does not we can ship whenever it's ready, right? So we are in bug fix mode. The second we've fixed all the bugs, it'll just land in the App Store. So I would say that I'm hoping in 8 weeks at the latest. I don't know. I'm throwing that out there.
Okay. Appreciate it. Thanks for being willing to at least share, no promises, but willing to share what the current thought is. All right. Well, thank you, Jacques. Really appreciate you going through that.